All right, here's a few news articles that I thought were interesting. This one was very interesting. We have heard a lot about medical artificial intelligence. The classic things are to look at fuzzy things like x-rays and so on and train artificial intelligence to spot diseases like that. Let's see if there's some way to... I appear to have hit some kind of paywall again. Continue reading. There we are. All right. So gastroenterology, radiology, and things like that. But the one that's pretty interesting here and probably most useful is this one here, which apparently came from the Today Show. This woman's child was sick, and she'd been for 3 years going to doctors and getting no hope, so she finally just typed his symptoms into ChatGPT and got the diagnosis the doctor needs. And this, I think, is probably less an endorsement of the quality of ChatGPT and more a condemnation of the medical system. This is extremely common. I read a lot of these stories where people go to a doctor and the doctor fails to diagnose something simple. I know my father, they couldn't even diagnose Parkinson's for years in Pennsylvania. And my sister tells me this is because they changed the laws in Pennsylvania, so the malpractice conditions are so terrible that all the good doctors have fled the state, so only bad doctors are there. But I think it's very common that people go to a doctor and they just don't get a very knowledgeable doctor. And so I think it's real important to do research into your own ailments by Google. And I wonder, anyway, ChatGPT may be a good option. I would imagine just Googling the symptoms might help too. But certainly, I highly encourage everybody to take charge of your own health, learn about your medical conditions, do your own research, but of course, avoid the stupid conspiracy theories that tell you that aliens are infecting you or demons or you shouldn't take vaccines and things like that. So you do, if you're going to do your own research, you have to also be able to discern reliable sources from unreliable sources. Whenever I'm researching medical things, I try to find something from the National Institute of Health or a major reputable hospital before I really believe it too much, you know. Now I see my Twitch stream gets really blurry. I'm going to try refreshing it. Anyway, yeah, the Mayo Clinic is another one. Yeah, someplace like that. So I mean, you might find something in some random blog somewhere, and it might be interesting, but I wouldn't take any action based on it until you find some reputable source to compare it to. Anyway, I was unaware of this, and I'm pretty interested in this. I use the Google Authenticator, and I've recommended it many times as safer than SMS-based two-factor. But apparently, this had to do with I think it was the Microsoft breach, the Retool breach. They had their systems were protected with two-factor authentication, although I couldn't quite understand exactly what happened in this article, but I think what he says is they were actually using the multi-factor authentication, the code from the Authenticator app alone without a password. So it wasn't really two-factor, it was just using that. But the surprising thing here is, he says, by default, the Google Authenticator will synchronize your tokens, sending them up to a cloud service, which can then get hacked. And that's what happened. Somebody hacked the cloud service, and then they got all the tokens for all the codes for all the services this person could reach, which is pretty drastic. And he says you should turn this off, and has a picture of how to turn it off here. And I looked, and my Google Authenticator on my iPhone doesn't look like this at all. It doesn't have this setting. I can't find any setting to turn this feature on or off, so I don't know quite what's going on here. Maybe this is the Android version of Google Authenticator, so I don't know if mine is synchronizing with some online cloud service or not, and I'm a little concerned to find out. Certainly, it is a really bad idea to do that. If you're going to do it, you certainly have to make sure you tell your users and warn them that this greatly lowers the security of the two-factor authentication to have this token copied somewhere else. So that's interesting. Now, this is a real important issue for this class, and we've already talked about this. You often have trouble finding enough data to train your model. And so one thing you can do is create synthetic data. We talked about it, I think, in the last lecture or the one before, how if you want to make your model distinguish written digits better, it might be better to artificially modify the digits, bend them a little, twist them a little, shift them a little, so your model gets practice in handling minor distortions like that. And that's one way to do it. And Stable Diffusion works this way. It takes an image and then adds a little more noise until it makes 1,000 variously noisy versions of the same image and then trains the model to remove the noise. So it's working on data that was synthesized. And these guys are doing the same thing. They want to train, they're making systems to monitor drivers, which is, I think this is a case with the Tesla. The Tesla so-called self-driving requires you to be paying attention, and it does something like detect whether you're keeping both hands on the wheels enough, something like that. But they're trying to have more driver monitoring systems that will watch, I guess, a video of the driver and decide if they think you're falling asleep or you're not paying attention. And so they're trying to train it. And they don't have enough videos of real drivers in various conditions, so they're trying to synthetically alter these to try to do things like add glasses and different clothes and stuff to them, which is a lot like that case where you modify the letters. So it's an interesting idea. Training your AI on synthetic data seems like it certainly can be a powerful technique. I'm sure it's also pretty easy for this to go wrong. If your synthetic data is not real world enough, that your AI will learn something bad about your synthetic data. And there are cases like this where they tried to train these X-ray detectors, and they would have pictures of X-rays of healthy people and pictures of X-rays of sick people, but what they didn't notice was all the X-rays of sick people were from real patients and had like a label in the corner with the patient's name and medical number or something. So all the AI did was detect the ones with labels in the corner and call them the sick ones, because of course it doesn't know the difference between, it just says distinguish these two sets, you don't tell it how. So you'd have to watch it. If your modified data has some kind of systematic error, then your AI might trigger on that error. So anyway, that's an interesting topic. And this one is, I guess, the last news article I'll talk about today, but this was in the first chapter. You've tried doing some prompt engineering here, where you write a prompt that will, there we were defeating the security features. Writing a prompt that would leak out a password, but learning how to write a prompt that will create the desirable, beneficial thing you want out of ChatGPT is also a job, and that's prompt engineering. And what they've done now is they're using AI to better improve prompts. So they give it a question where they know the right answer. They've got examples down here. There. You ask it a question. There. Anyway, they ask it a question. I'm not able to find my example here. They ask an example of something where they know the right answer, and then they say, prompt this and see if it gave the right answer, and if not, modify the prompt until it gets something closer to the right answer, and they are able to train the AI to do the prompt engineering. So this is a common feature here. There's a lot of layers of AI. Another place I see this is in trying to stop prompt injection attacks, like we were doing with that Gandalf thing. They will have another AI look at the output of the first one and decide if it seems to be being tricked into divulging a secret or breaking your rules. And it seems to me like this is what Google Bard is doing, because Google Bard about a month or two ago started rejecting a lot of questions I'd asked. Ask anything a little bit fishy, it'll say, I'm sorry, I can't do that. So it seems like they've added a layer to detect forbidden output. And that's certainly what you can do, just have layers of AI. One AI to help write the prompt, one AI to help clean up the response later. That seems like a logical thing to do. All right. Anyway, let me stop this one.